Well, everyone, this is the news headline that's got everybody panicking and freaking out right now, and I have to admit, it's definitely not good news, but it's not the end of the world. It's just more of the same. It's more of Trump living up to his nickname, Teflon Don. I know that a lot of you guys were probably holding out hope that the Republican-leaning, multiple current sitting Trump-appointed Supreme Court justices wouldn't decide to make him completely immune to legal consequences for any laws he breaks as president, but I certainly wasn't. I was kind of expecting this, not in sort of like a, I give up way, but more in a, yeah, no, this is what the Republicans do. This is why we can't let him get reelected. Like, this is part of why Project 2025 and his second term would be so bad, is because, yeah, of course he's not going to have any legal consequences for any of the awful, illegal shit he's going to do if he takes office, right? But, like I said before, there is one real solution to this, and that's making sure Trump doesn't get back into office. For a variety of reasons, by the way. Assuming Trump doesn't destroy our democracy and annihilate the country and everything with it, and does end up leaving office at the end of his 4 years, like, even if he does all of that, another 4 years of Trump means that he could potentially appoint another Supreme Court justice, for all we know. If a Supreme Court justice dies or steps down while Trump is in office, he can just replace them with another Trump-appointed Supreme Court justice. And trust me, they'll probably be young. They'll probably be a young, conservative young buck that's going to be around for decades and decades and decades on the Supreme Court. You need to vote. There are no systems, no bureaucracy that is magically going to sweep in and save the day. This is all you. It's all you. You've got to exert your power through your electoral weight. And that's your vote. We got some CNN coverage of the ruling from the Supreme Court here. Let's hear what the deal is. This should be motivation for you to be more active, not to become passive and doomer.
Paula Reed, I know you've been listening to this decision. What have we heard?
We have. Of course, this is not a thumbs up, thumbs down. This is a complicated decision. We just got it here. It's an opinion from Chief Justice John Roberts, finding that former presidents are entitled to absolute immunity for official acts, but not for unofficial acts. So what does that translate to?
It's basically exactly what they've been talking about this whole time, which is like anything that the president does while president, they're immune from any legal consequences, but anything the president does when they weren't president, or before they were president, or after they were president, that's still considered a crime. Because if they were president while they did it, it's still considered official. That's my understanding of the way they're trying to go about this.
Well, this is something we saw that was sort of signaled in oral argument, because what this means is that the former president cannot be prosecuted for anything that was officially part of his job when he was in office. And that's significant because even his own lawyers.
And they'll rule that anything he did was part of his job, right? Like, when he's the president, it's 24/7, 7 days a week, 365. He's the president. Everything he does would be considered official. So for those 4 years, every crime he committed in that stint, he would be found basically pardoned of by default.
Conceded during oral argument that not everything that is alleged in this indictment was an official act. So now the question is, what does the special counsel...
And it's not just Trump either. This is the president. Like, the sitting president now has effectively we have no recourse to pursue the sitting president with legal action if they commit an atrocity that's against the law. Like a king who gets to say what the law is and the rules are, so is allowed to break them. That is the power the president would effectively have. Yeah, Biden should just jaywalk openly.
Counsel do here. He could potentially try to cull down this indictment to a more narrow one, just focusing on...
What does it stop Biden from abusing this? Biden's a Democrat.
Unofficial acts, and then try to proceed with this case. Still an open question, though, about whether even a slimmed down case could go before the election. 3 reasons for that. One, the judge overseeing this, Judge Tanya Chutkan, she has signaled that the lawyers should get some lead time on this. I mean, we're a couple months out from the election. The idea of putting the Republican candidate for the presidency on...
Official presidential actions include, but are not limited to, golf, hiring prostitutes, selling top secret info to foreign powers, rape, sexual assault. Yeah, the Trump, like, presidency commercial.
On trial, where he would have to be in court months, weeks before the election. That's something that would likely have us right here again before the Supreme Court. Also, the Attorney General, unlikely to allow something to go ahead that quickly, but we'll see. But right now, this decision, the Supreme Court finding that former presidents are entitled to absolute immunity for official acts, but not for unofficial acts. This opinion, very, very long. It's going to take us a while to get.
I just remembered somebody on Twitter pointed out during the debate when Joe Biden brings up that Donald Trump had sex with a porn star while his wife was pregnant with his child, you can see Trump's like closing his eyes and smirking a little, like he's reminiscing about it, like he's remembering that time, and he can't help but smile. He does. I'm sorry, it's completely unrelated. But I just remembered that, and I felt you guys deserved to have that thought shared with you.
Through everything.
Right now I'm looking at an excerpt from the Roberts written decision. He says, quote, Trump asserts a far broader immunity than the limited one we have recognized, meaning the court. The text of the clause provides little support for the absolute immunity claim that Trump asserts. So they're rejecting that.
I had to inject some comedy in here, okay? There had to be something funny in this segment, or this topic would just be so sad and so depressing. Like, there's not really much I can add other than this is awful. It's not as, like, overwhelmingly awful as you might hear it reported, and people are going to clickbait it a lot, for sure. But, it's certainly not good. It's certainly not good.
But, in essence, all of the details as to the allegations made, the accusations made in the Jack Smith indictment of Donald Trump, not all of them, but many of them, the court is saying, we are sending this back to the district court. They have to decide whether Trump's communications with the American people, calling them to rally to the Capitol on January 6th, and everything that happened after that, the disruption of the counting of the electoral votes.
Yeah, he was obviously never going to be held accountable for this, and frankly, from what I can tell polling-wise, the American people are not receptive to any consequences for Trump when it comes to January 6th. Like, the January 6th thing, I don't know how big of a majority of Americans it is, but a majority of Americans think that Democrats should quote-unquote Democrats should drop January 6th. Whether it be because A, they think it's just sort of an endless loop of nothing where no justice is going to come out of it, or because they think it was justified. Americans just don't care for there to be any justice out of January 6th. Certainly not for Trump. The majority of Americans are also retarded. That is true. That is true. Yeah, getting justice is copium. Yeah, there probably won't be justice for January 6th outside of some of the most insane rioters who are dumb enough to post, like, videos of their faces online. But Trump himself, he's very good at stochastic terrorism, right? It's about 60% of Americans. Okay, yeah, so not a strong majority, but still a majority, a technical majority of 60% of Americans think that, quote-unquote, the Democrats should just drop January 6th.
The sham electors scheme, all of that, whether or not that's an official act, has to be determined by the U.S. District Court. And Adley Honig, you were saying what's most significant about that is the U.S. Supreme Court could have said, we're remanding this to the district court, to the lower court, and whatever they say goes, and we will uphold that. They didn't say that.
Exactly. To the contrary. This case will not go before the election. It will not be tried before the election, and here's why. Supreme Court has just said there is such thing as criminal immunity. The test, as we anticipated, is essentially official acts versus unofficial acts. We're sending it back to the district court, and this is an important detail, the court says several times, whatever the district court finds can be appealed before trial. Jack Smith had made an argument of, well, maybe...
Yeah, you're actually making a good point there, One Piece 34. Have you noticed that Trump's way of handling this election is a lot like the way Hillary handled it? Like, Trump in 2020 and 2024 is acting a lot like Hillary. Like the say hello to this future president type shit. Like, I don't know. Every time I see new polling data from the U.S., I'll check that out in a second, Ride the Rails, but it is a purple link. All right, let's watch.
The district judge, the trial judge, can work it out and send it to the jury. And then the jury can separate official from unofficial acts. Several times in this opinion, the Supreme Court, the majority, says explicitly whatever the judge decides about what's official or unofficial, what's immune or not immune, that can be appealed back up. 0% chance that happens before November.
So why do that? I mean, if they are saying, hey, we're the U.S. Supreme Court and we're going to have the final say on this no matter what, why not just make it clear? Everything's delineated in the indictment. Why not just make it clear? And if Judge Chutkan decides X, Y, or Z, we will agree with that. Why not just be explicit?
Because the Supreme Court, they're in a court of appeal.
Is Chutkan the Trump appointee judge? I think hold on. I think she is. Or he is. Is it no, Tanya Chutkan. Trump appointed, right? No, appointed by Obama. Okay. Never mind. Different judge. Yeah, no, I think she's fine. Okay, what's the... Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, actually, that's good news. No, I think that's probably a good thing. If she's... Yeah, no, she seems fine. I don't think that she's going to have a favorability towards Trump, like in the documents case that Trump is under right now, where the judge is like just blatantly pro-Trump, both appointed by Trump and also just openly acting favorable towards Trump, despite the evidence that he is guilty.
Appeals, they want to see a record, right? And I think, with Judge Chutkan just kind of dismissing out of hand all conduct whatsoever, the president has no immunity for all criminal conduct, for any criminal conduct. They've gone back and said, no, you need to go look at this and then come back to us based upon what we've said in this opinion.
And the other thing is, it's the right.
So they're trying to strong arm her into agreeing with the Supreme Court's opinion. Like they're basically just telling her no, our opinion that Trump or the president should be immune is correct. Read our opinion, then come back and agree with us. Is that what they said?
And rules governing when and how to appeal aren't set in stone or aren't entirely clear. And I think they felt some need to delineate that this is an appealable order. They aren't always. And sometimes some things you have to wait to appeal until the end of a trial. They're giving whoever it is, and probably Trump, the opportunity to appeal during trial.
Well, let me ask you, do you think that if Judge Chutkan had ruled differently initially and said it basically closer to this, the conversations with the Justice Department are clearly official acts, I'm not going to count them, but the other one, if there had been a less of a sweeping, of course he can be indicted on any of this stuff, ruling by Judge Chutkan, would this not have been ended up where it was today? Did she open the door for a decision like that?
Yeah, I feel like people are just being a little too doomer. It's not even a matter of, you shouldn't doomer over this stuff. It's also a matter of this news is bad, but it's nowhere near as bad as you guys have made me think. Jesus Christ. Y'all were freaking out about this like he had been given absolute immunity. He's not. That's not at all. The sitting president has not been given full immunity, even of crimes committed that are considered official acts. It's still considered on a case-by-case basis. And not to mention, this doesn't really mean anything outside of, trying to get some, karmic justice against him for stuff he's already done, as long as we prevent him from getting elected again. Please, for God's sakes, vote.
She did. I think Judge Chutkan's going to have a lot of regret. When she issued her opinion, it just said there's no such thing as automatic immunity for everything a president does his whole 4 years. When I was reading that, I said, okay, where's Part B? I expected Part B to be, and I find, having reviewed the record and reviewed the documents, and I find that even if there is such thing as immunity, he was outside the scope. And by the way, that's what the Court of Appeals did on their ruling. The problem is, as Jim was saying, the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, they're not fact finders. This can only be done at the district court level. And so I suspect Judge Chutkan is feeling some regret. It wasn't like it was some leap of logic that she should do that. This happens. There are hearings. For example, in the Georgia case, Mark Meadows is trying to get his case moved over to federal court. The question there is almost the same thing. Was Mark Meadows in or out of the scope? You know what the federal judge did there in Georgia? He held a hearing. Mark Meadows testified. He said, I find, based on this hearing, you're outside the scope. If Judge Chutkan had done that, we'd be in a very different position.
Where I don't agree with that, though, is that either of the parties.
So they're arguing right now about whether or not some onus is on Judge Chutkan for giving the Supreme Court the opportunity to challenge her in this way and to provide Trump, and by that extension, every president, but really this is about Trump. It's always about Trump, immunity. I don't know. I don't know if you can really blame it on Chutkan, because, like, at this point, we know the Republicans, and especially the Trump appointees, the Trump loyalists as well, they'll do anything for him. There's no, like, they'll break procedure, bend the rules. That's the whole point. It's all about breaking the system and letting Trump build a new one out of the ashes.
Would have had an opportunity to appeal the portion of
they have once again in 2024 they're thanking Obama. Thanks, Obama.
That opinion that they did not agree with.
Of course, they blame the Obama-appointed judge.
The baby gobbledygook that they would have had a right to appeal. You can't tell me that either Jack Smith or Trump's team would not have attempted to take it up, and the Supreme Court would have created similar gobbledygook.
But we would have had an answer right now. Well, if she'd already done the hearing, we'd know right now.
They would have gone up to the Supreme Court, though, and I think
we'll never know. This is on Earth.
This
is on Earth too. All I can tell you is, having been covering the U.S. Supreme Court and their.
Sometimes I wonder if this kind of stuff isn't even like, what kind of message do you think this sends to Americans? Like, even after the recent presidential debate, Biden's polling numbers have gone up. It's very clear that as we get closer to the election, the majority of Americans who have been politically kind of tapped out for the last 3 years are going to reactivate, and they remember what happened when Trump was president. They know about Roe v. Wade. They may have voted during the midterms where the Democrats overperformed. I think that come election season, and like the last few months before the election, we're going to see so many Americans activate politically, and they're going to be more left-leaning. Or at least Democrat-leaning, pro-Biden leaning. It won't be an enthusiastic support of Biden. Just like in 2020, it won't be enthusiastic, but the enthusiasm will come from making Trump fail. I think that when it really comes to it, everybody is probably going to get drawn together, anyone who's even marginally left-leaning, by a mutual desire to see Trump fail and his supporters scream and cry and bitch and moan again about it. That was such a great time until they started, like, attacking the Capitol. But up until that point, it was so fun watching them scream and bitch about it. It was so fucking funny. We need history to repeat itself there.
Just to go back to Bush v. Gore.
Yeah.
The reason that the conservative court in Bush v. Gore was able to do what they did is because the Florida Supreme Court let them.
Yeah.
The Florida Supreme Court made so many bad decisions and bad rulings.
Yeah. My understanding of the Bush v. Gore thing was that it all came down to Florida, and there was, like, actual election fraud in Florida, like, straight up. And then on top of that, the Florida Supreme Court just straight up allowed it and just gave the election to Bush. Just gave it to Bush. They said, yeah, no, we're going to give the whole state to Bush. He gets all the electoral votes.
It was easy for the U.S. Supreme Court to come in and say, no, stop the count.
Yeah, what's interesting here, and there's a great line, I'm skimming it very quickly, in Justice Sotomayor's dissent.
Give it to Bush.
She says, the majority pays lip service to this idea that the president is not above the law, and then in effect says that for certain official acts, the president is in fact above the law. It's how do you sort out what this actually means?
Let's do that.
Well, the intent behind it is that it would only ever apply to Trump or whoever the next Republican, like, him guy is, right? Because they're very open and transparent about the fact that they just want to destroy the system and any roadblocks that keep them from holding absolute power forever. If you lived in Florida, any of you guys, you'll have seen that, like, a fair amount of Trump supporters in, like, the deep South have signs in their lawn that start with Trump 2020 and Trump 2024, and then they continue on with like Trump 2028, Trump 20, like onward and onward and onward, right? Because they don't like term limits. They want Trump to be president forever, and then for Barron Trump or like Eric Trump to take his place. Like they literally want the Trump family dynasty to rule our country forever now. There are signs that depict that are officially, I don't know if they're even officially licensed, but I know for a fact that tons of Trump supporters have them staked in their lawn all across Florida. They were real popular back in 2020.
Right now, because in the oral arguments, there were certain examples that were given. Let's explore a couple of those and what today's...
I've seen designs that straight up say things to the effect of Trump forever. Yeah, pretty much that. That is what I'm describing to you guys, Sad Stardust.
Decision means. First one was raised by Justice Sonia Sotomayor back in, was this April? What about getting SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Let's roll that tape.
Well, that's exactly the kind of thing this is meant to protect Trump from legal actions for. Yeah, like that. If Trump gets elected, I would not be surprised if within the first month the headlines start coming in about the arrests and executions of like political opponents that he will say were like criminals, or like, you know, he might go even the extra mile and just straight up say they're pedophiles. You know, just like every person who he's pissed off at in the world of politics just gets arrested. And he's like, we have been rounding up all the pedophiles in Washington. Like, and his fans are just screaming like, yeah, get those groomers. Like, we really don't want Trump to get reelected. Do not be complacent electorally.
President decides that his rival is a corrupt person, and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him. Is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
They admit it. Mind you, Supreme Court justices, like, they're just there forever. They get that job forever, so they can just be honest about that kind of thing. They can't just get fired for being openly, like, evil.
That was a stunning moment in April. Did the court just say, yeah, you can assassinate a political rival?
No, I don't think they did. That's a ridiculous...
No, they did. They did. Well, yeah, it would depend on the context, but yeah, is what they just said. The question was very clear, and the answer was very clear, Mr. Cope man.
To assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
That is a yes.
That was a stunning moment in April. Did the court just say, yeah, you can assassinate a political rival?
No, I don't think they did. That's a ridiculous answer by Donald Trump.
They did.
A dangerous and reckless answer. One really important thing. The basis for Donald Trump's legal argument that maybe he can order an assassination and still be okay is this preposterous argument that they offered below that, well, a president can only be indicted if he's first impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate. The Supreme Court explicitly rejected that argument. They said impeachment has nothing to do with this. That's not the test.
To your question, Jake, someone's got to decide.
The problem is the exact thing, the political like ruling law. I forget what exact term it would have that they're like trying to put in place. Literally says that for the president to be found guilty of a crime, as like that is done as an official act, he would first have to be impeached by the House and Senate, and then found guilty by the Senate of said crime, and then there would have to be, would have to be found guilty by the Senate, and then voted to be impeached by the Senate, and then would have to be tried. There would have to be 3 layers of guilty prosecution in order for the president to be found guilty of committing a crime. That's not equal, by the way. Like, that's not how it should work, just principally, because the president should not have, like, more legal protection, like, on a fundamental level than the average American. That's stupid. That's, like, fundamentally anti-American. If they agree that we can, Biden send Solid Bernie into Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, no, Biden should send Big Boss Bernie into Mar-a-Lago to do the funniest shit ever. Very true. Get Amon animations on it.
Decide what's the official act, right?
Right.
And that, the challenge here, and this was what Sotomayor was getting at in her point, somebody has to make the call as to whether even the preposterous SEAL Team 6 example falls under the ambit of official acts, and that's litigation in months in court.
No, agreed. I think that's something that will have to be decided by the trial court if we were faced with that preposterous type of scenario. No doubt about it.
Jamie.
I just have a quick question for the lawyer. So one of the big concerns is getting evidence out in front of voters before November. We now don't think a trial
not gonna get it.
is possible.
No.
Is it possible, one lawyer just texted, would an evidentiary hearing be a way for Jack Smith to get some of that evidence out there in the public record?
Sure. So the district judge now has to have an evidentiary hearing. She can absolutely do that before the election. She can hear from witnesses. We're not going to get a verdict. I guess the judge will say some things were official or unofficial, but there's not going to be a convicted felon tag hung on Donald Trump for this case. I also should add, this is a major problem for the Georgia case because the factual allegations are very similar for Fani Willis's case. Now, that case is beset by its own series of problems, but now they're going to have to contend with this immunity problem as well.
Interesting. Okay. So Trump is not quite as immune as I thought he was, but this is certainly not good news. It's really bizarre how many headlines are just outright advertising this as like, Trump has immunity, Trump full immunity, Trump, Supreme Court rules in Trump immunity case. Trump, like, the headlines are really clickbaiting it, so I can't really blame people for thinking that otherwise, but it's not quite that extreme. On top of that, fundamentally, this doesn't matter if we just keep Trump out of office forever. Just don't let him get back into office, please. Vote. Vote. Seriously. You'd be surprised at how much even a single vote matters, you know? It always like to throw back to the Bush v. Gore election where it really came down to a small number of votes and, you know, had just a few thousand more people thought their vote mattered and voted for Al Gore, maybe things would be different. Maybe the Republicans wouldn't have been able to say no recount or stop the count, because that was the motto. The reason why Trump said stop the count is because that's how Bush got elected. Stop the count is a Republican motto for, like, stop counting votes. You know, like, we don't want the actual president to be the person who got the most votes. We want it to be one of us, you know? Oh, yeah, very true. Ride the Rails, thank you for the $5. I really appreciate that. Very kind of you. What a perfect way to finish off the segment. So true. Every time I see polling data from the U.S., I mean, this isn't true right now, actually. Maybe it is when it comes to, like, whether or not Trump should be charged for January 6th, but I'd say right now the polling is actually pretty good. It's in favor of Biden right now.
Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded. Because democracy...
It's so fucking good. I love that video so much. I love that video. It's so good. Anyway, if you enjoyed this segment, consider dropping a like. Every thumbs up really does go a long way, no matter when, where, or what you're watching. Subscribe and ring the bell icon if you haven't already on YouTube so they tell you when I go live or upload a new video. And of course, don't forget to comment down below as well. It helps as much as liking. So if you like and comment, well, that's double the support on the channel, and it really does help, so thank you. And don't forget to follow my social medias, which are all linked down below in the description, and consider perhaps even joining my fan Discord, which is the main hub of my community, and it's totally free to join as well. I host weekly watch parties, gaming events, or call-in streams in there, and I also announce all my new uploads and streams, so you won't miss anything if you become a member of the Discord. Do not forget as well, by the way, that if you want to support me directly financially, it is very appreciated if you do so. It helps to support me a lot. If you donate, subscribe, subscribe or gift a sub on my website, or support me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch to the Streamlabs link down below. But regardless of how you support me, thank you so much for watching, even if you're just a lurker chilling out, and have a good one.